Hello there and welcome back to where we take a look at some of the more off-meta options available to us, and today we are taking a look at Sabe Blue. Now, I think the general consensus is that Sabe Yellow is the way to go. I thought, you know what, that's a bit boring and obvious, so let's try going into space with Sabe. So you'll see the list probably looks a little bit of a mess. There are a decent number of 2-ofs. Some of them are by design, some of them are because I don't have the cards to make them a full playset. But let's get into what Sabe herself does, and that will explain the logic behind the deck itself. So when she's not deployed, when a friendly unit deals combat damage to a base, which means it has to attack the base directly, it is not via other ancillary effects. I think Overwhelm would trigger it. Now there's no Overwhelm units in yellow or blue to my knowledge, but I think that would trigger it if you went green or red. Anyway, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of a defending player's deck and discard one of those cards. So hopefully you are basically making their hands and deck less effective the more you do this. You are able to get some hand knowledge so you know what is coming, and that can be very useful when we've got the likes of Takedown and Fell the Dragon. You can purposefully leave the likes of a Podameron on the top of their deck because you already have Fell the Dragon in hand. You can leave that Space Sentinel on the top of their deck because you already have Takedown in hand. Hell, you could be really brave if you know you're going to have the initiative. Leave Overwhelming Barrage on the top of their deck because you've got Jam Communications in your hand. So it's very useful in that sense. And why have we gone for space then? Because I would say space is probably the most reliable way at the moment. You will be able to hit their base every single turn. The ground is generally where most decks are focused around. So basically we just lane dodge, go to space predominantly, and get Sabe's effect more often than not. She deploys on 5, which is very useful for this kind of deck. She is a 3/6, so not amazing stats. Does have a raid 1 as a little bonus, and the effect basically becomes Bazine on a leader. She has to deal with combat damage to a base, so if there's sentinels on the ground, you're going to struggle to get the disruption going in the same way. But you look at the defending player's hand, you may discard a card from it, so if you see their hand and see that it's actually pretty useless, then you can just let them have that useless hand. And if you do discard a card, they draw a card. So as I say, it's Bazine on a leader. Now, the downside of her front side action, of course, is that if there are 2 cards that are not very good, then you would ideally want to just leave those there. However, it is not a choice. You have to discard one of those. So if they're not very useful, you've actually helped them get towards closer to something that is more useful. So that is a downside. However, I've found generally I have probably made their hand worse more often than not. So I would say in the majority of cases it's actually a positive front side effect. But yeah, when Sabe deploys, she's not necessarily always going to be punching base. You might need to do a little bit of cleanup on the ground because we only have herself and one other ground unit. We do have some pilots, but we're not deploying them on the ground really. So yeah, it's past the proof of concept stage. It's done pretty well for me so far. There might be some tweakings too, but I genuinely think there is something to this. So let's have a look at, I should say, I mean, you can read, of course, but just a standard 30 HP base. Need a little bit of longevity. I don't think the rare bases really do much for this deck. So let's start off with the space units, as this is a space deck. So we've got the new Bravo Squadron fighter. It is a 2/3 with Saboteur. So this is just something that will bypass Sentinels and enable us to carry on with the disruption game. Emissaries Sheathipede. Try saying that 5 times in a row really quick. A 2-cost 2/4, so above 8. It does have a negative of when defeated, each opponent may ready a resource. One singular resource is probably not going to do a whole lot, so I think the downside is pretty non-existent. Why have we gone for it? Well, it's for 4 health. It is immune. Well, not immune, you know what I mean. it doesn't die to blue leader straight away. So that is the main reason it is in here. It ensures more likely than not that we will have a unit going into turn 2. N1 Starfighter, so just as a basically a Phoenix Squadron A-Wing equivalent in this deck as a 3-2. Restore Dark, pretty standard, gives us Restore 1. We do have some Restore in this deck, which will help us outrace as we go along. Death Space Skirmisher, if we have the initiative on turn 1, then we really want to get this on turn 2 to immediately exhaust whatever they've deployed, and we are already ahead in any kind of damage race. I've got an Ebon Hawk in here. I do only have one of the things, so that's why there's only one in here. It can punch for 5 pretty reliably. We do have some events and upgrades that will be mono aspect, so you won't be able to get the disclose off. Is the pilot Millennium Falcon, the jump to lightspeed Millennium Falcon, a more reliable bet? Quite possibly, because it also has the 1 extra health. But hey, it's a new set. I want to try new stuff. Red Squadron X-Wing. So again, you may prefer the jump to lightspeed Millennium Falcon. However, I think card draw and card advantage is the name of the game in this deck. We are making their hand worse. We are making our hand better by drawing cards ourselves, and then we can do some double plays later on. So yeah, just a solid option in that sense. Blue Ace is genuinely ridiculous. It is too good, to be honest, to not include in a yellow hero deck, I think, of pretty much any kind. And you might be thinking, yeah, but what about the negative on attack? That rarely is actually ever relevant. It comes in ambushing, so excuse me. If you're ambushing an exhausted unit, then you just choose to ready that exhausted unit, and you're probably defeating it at the same time. So there is literally no downside there. Because we don't defeat many things in the ground arena, then sure, we'll do 4 damage to your base, and you can ready your 2-powered turn 1 unit that you've played. Doesn't bother me whatsoever. So as I say, we've got some restore in the decks, which will kind of cancel out that 2 power that they're hitting for on the ground, if they even want to. So I don't think it's really much of a downside whatsoever. Now, if you get to the late game, then sure, it will be a downside probably, but I really don't see it. This would be a 3 of if I had it. Razor Crest, so hasn't seen a whole lot of play recently, I have to be honest. 3-4 stats aren't great, but it does have Restore 2, and you can return an upgrade from your discard pile to your hand. Now, unfortunately, this does not include pilots because they are a unit card by default. It's only when you are playing it as an upgrade from your hand that it is classed as an upgrade for any other effect text purposes. But we do have Perilous Position. That is the main one that we'd be looking to return to our hand. And again, this can help with hand advantage and ours being better than our opponents. I've gone with the Coronet as well. I don't think this would be a 3 of. I think it would remain as a 2 of regardless. But it has Restore 1. It's a 4-6, so it's the perfect awkward stat line to be immune from Velvet Dragon and Takedown initially. And also each other friendly unit gains Restore 1. So this helps, again, in a damage race situation where we're able to not necessarily do more damage quicker than our opponent, but we are taking damage off as we go. And then I only have 1 Light Maker, so that's why there's 1 in here. It's too good to not include. Punches for 7, and they kind of have to deal with it straight away. As I say, otherwise they get punched 7, and if they do deal with it, you can exhaust a whole enemy arena. So as we are space focused and we don't have a whole lot on the ground, we're going to be focusing on exhausting the ground arena more often than not. Now we come to the wild card. So this is a card that doesn't see a whole lot of play that I like to highlight, or not a lot of play in the context of a leader that we're looking at. However, I think Cassian and/or Pilot has seen precisely 0 play from what I can see and gather of my experience of this game. So if you deploy him on the ground, he is a 3-4, so those are kind of bleh stats really, for no effect. But piloting as a 2 cost, and 2 cost is pretty useful in this deck because I wouldn't say we normally go with a pilot on turn 2. An option might be that we do a pilot on the 4 resource turn, and then we play another 2 cost unit out. But what does Cassian do, you might be asking, which is fair because no one uses him. He gives +1, +3 stats, so it's not an aggressive upgrade, but it is blue, so that would generally be the case anyway. And the attached unit gains on attack, so this will happen before the Sabe effect if you choose to use it. Discard a card from the defending player's deck. If that card costs 3 or less, draw a card. So what we can do, potentially, is activate the Sabe effect on a different unit, leave a 3 cost or lower card on the top of their deck, and then we attack with the piloted Cassian unit to ensure we get that value. So again, well, in this sense, we may not necessarily be making their hand worse because we don't know what the next 2 cards will be from their deck. However, again, we are giving ourselves a card, which will mean we have more options to deal with whatever they're going to do next. So I've been quite impressed with how useful this has been, to be honest. It's a card I've wanted to use for a long time, but I've never really found a place for it. But I think I found a home for him, and I think it works quite well. And the +3 health does make things surprisingly beefy. So yeah, I'm quite happy. I think if he was a 3 cost pilot, he probably wouldn't be usable, but the 2 cost is very significant. The other pilot we've gone for is, of course, Han Solo. So he does have some ground utility. I don't think I've ever used it yet, but if you do need to get the ground arena a little bit more under control, then he does have the 4 power ambush. Now, on 5, there will be some full health units around. They are commonly at the 4 resource turn, K2SO, Kiadi others that I cannot think of off the top of my head. But he is also a 2 cost pilot, which does surprise me. Whenever I am about to play the card, I'm like, is this guy 2 cost? He should be 3, right? But when played as an upgrade, you may attack with the attached unit, so it's action efficient. You get to attack into their base straight away and do the disruption. If it's a Millennium Falcon, now we don't have a Falcons in here at the moment, it deals its combat damage before the defender, so it gets the shoot first effect basically. It will take no damage back if it defeats the defending unit. So he gives +2, +3, so more aggressive than the Cassian. But yeah, just overall very good. If I had 3 of him, I'm pretty confident it would be a 3 of. So we come to the only bona fide ground unit in this deck, and that is, of course, Captain Rex. Now, if you saw my Satine video, I don't know how much I gushed about the card in there, but I think it's the perfect card, genuinely, in the whole game. I mean, sure, you might think, 6 costs is a bit much, isn't it, mate? To be a perfect card, but... And Charismatic, sure, maybe that's a perfect card, whatever. But Captain Rex, he has 7 stats, which are nuts. He defends the ground when you play him, and they're going to have to deal with him because they're going to get hit for 7 next turn if they don't. It's nuts. Yes, you have to give an enemy unit Sentinel. Whatever. They'll have ground units that we don't really care about, and we don't always need to hit in with Sabe if we're going to hit in with for 7. But yeah, just give himself Sentinel, give a Poxy ground unit Sentinel. They're like, okay, I've got a roadblock to deal with, haven't I? And we just carry on hitting them in space. So yeah, Rex he's here for the initial defensive capability that he gives us because we're not killing stuff on the ground. But then also he's posing the massive threat of, well, if I hit you for 7 next turn, I win, or you're going to have to do something to clear out him and probably most of my space arena, if not all of it, because you'll be a few damage away from death. So yeah, Captain Rex is just excellent. And again, I think Blue Hero, he's probably an auto-include in pretty much every Blue Hero deck you can think of. On to our events. So we see a lot of 2-ofs here, and as I mentioned earlier, it's good to have options in this deck, and I think it can more reliably make use of 2-ofs because we can see partly what is coming due to Sabe's effect. So Jam Comms, this can be quite useful probably around the 5 resource turn, I would say, because that's when Overwhelming Barrage, Craving, it's only events, isn't it? So yeah, I've gone for this instead of Spark of Rebellion because sometimes you will want to do something like Velvet Dragon and Takedown plus Jam Comms. Spark of Rebellion would not allow you to do that at 5 resources, which is Sabe's flip turn. So yeah, and it's just a catch-all for events. So yeah, as I said earlier, you take a look at the top 2 cards now. Your opponent might be suspicious if you discard like a 2-cost unit and leave Overwhelming Barrage on the top of their deck. However, I still think they'll probably just keep it in their hand, and then you just get rid of it straight away next turn. You'll probably only be able to do that once. They'll probably learn after that. But the first time you do it, they'll be like, that makes sense. Surprise Strike, just push some damage, nothing to say here. Outmaneuver, so this can be extremely important. It's not uncommon around the 5 resource turn that your opponent has a ground arena of like 4 or 5 different units. Well, guess what? We'll just outmaneuver your whole ground arena. We'll deploy Sabe. We'll get in all of our damage in space and the ground. And you are in a very tricky position now. Fell the Dragon and take down. So same as Jam Comms really. We have an idea as to what is coming next. We can leave things on the top of their deck that we already have the answer to in hand. I think an argument could be made that these could be 3-ofs to make even better utility of that, but I think because of Sabe's ability, that's why I've gone for 2-ofs for both of them. Because you won't necessarily be keeping these answers in hand for something just in case they have it. You'll know if they have it or not. So, well, mostly. On to the upgrades, and Hotshot Blaster, just the one, because, as I say, we only have 2 genuine ground units. Now, often, I mean, Sabe is going to be the main target for the Hotshot Blaster, and then she'll hit for 6. And that can be an important breakpoint. If you need to be clearing out the ground arena a bit instead of hitting their base, then 6 power is much more useful than 4 power. There's a decent number of 5 health units in the game. It makes a surprising amount of difference. Armor of Fortune. So the logic behind this one is giving Sabe more health so that she can continue disrupting on the ground when hitting their base. It would give her 9 health overall, so she's probably going to take 2 high-powered attacks, like from a Podamron. Well, yeah, Podamron, I know, because he's got the upgrade defeating thing as well, doesn't he? But anyway, they'd have to discard a lot of cards to do that. No, just a 1, anyway. However, after playing more with the deck, I would actually go with Sneaking Suspicion. Now, Sneaking Suspicion is generally pretty terrible. However, as I just mentioned, 4 power versus, I said 4 power versus 6 power, 4 power versus 5 power is also significantly different because of the 5 health units. Sneaking Suspicion would give her 5 power when attacking, so that gives us the little boost we might need to start clearing out the ground arena a little bit. She might be able to take out 2 units before she goes down. And then Perilous Position. So an argument could be made for this to be a 3-of. It will make triggering the Razor Crest more likely. However, we are just mainly using it to, again, slow down the ground arena. It might kill the odd thing off here and there when you attach it. That's not necessarily what we're going for. It's mainly to just be like, no, that Podamron is not attacking this turn. We'll see you next turn. So in terms of missing pieces, there is always, of course, the Spark of Rebellion Millennium Falcon. I do not have any, as I have to keep repeating myself on the forums where it's like, oh, why no Millennium Falcon? It's like, I don't have them. That's why they're not there. Although I have to say, I don't know. I guess it would, in this deck it would be more as a later game burst damage finisher, because if you play it on 3 resources, you may very well have to bounce it back to your hand because you might have to ambush out the blue ace because the blue ace is too good. So I think it could be a little awkward, and I will admit when I've borrowed the Falcon for decks in the past, I've struggled to know when to use it because of this resource tax. But that's probably it is a me issue. Han Solo Pilot, that would definitely be, well, I say definitely, highly likely to be a 3-of, and then Blue Ace is definitely a 3-of. So in terms of other options, I've already mentioned Sneaking Suspicion, and as a reminder for other options, I'm only going to go over the current set now. I'm not going to go backwards for past 5 sets. We all know that, yes, X card is, I can't think of an obvious one now, Waylay. We all know Waylay is very good. I don't need to go over it. So speaking of Waylay, we have Waylay at home, Beguile. So this would be, I mean, this is rotation Waylay, basically. It does give you knowledge of their hand as well, but because we're already getting a preview of some of their hand, it probably feels a little bit over overcooked, overzealous on that front. I can't think of a word. Overdone. Yeah, I still can't think of a word. Anyway, the wrong ride. So this can come down on 5 resources, which is overwhelming barrage turn if you've perhaps not been able to get a jam comms down. Then you can plot this out, pay 3, and they have to exhaust 2 resources. They're only going to be able to use 3 resources. We still have 2, which might mean we have space for a pilot or a spaceship, or the Sneaking Suspicion / Armor of Fortune plot as well. And then Galen Urso, this is the quintessential, I think, sideboard card. I think it's going to be in many a blue hero deck. When played, name a card while this unit is in play. Each non-leader card an opponent owns with that name, including those not in play, lose all abilities and can't gain abilities. So the most value you'll get out of it is naming an event, because the event will literally be useless. If you name any kind of unit, they will still have their stats. They just won't have any abilities whatsoever. It can have an extremely niche use if they have, let's say you're against Boba Fett, for example, and you've controlled their space arena. You're on a 6 resource turn. You play Galen Urso, you say Ruthless Raider. Maybe they've already deployed for Ruthless Raider. Well, you can name that, and then it will not gain Boba's deploy ability on that ship because it can't gain abilities. So I'm pretty sure that would work. But yeah, primarily you're going to be naming events. The other day I did actually name Craven Power because I knew it was in their hand, and they would be able to basically 2-for-1 me with the when played of Craven Power. Well, now that I've named it, all it does is give a +2/+2 boost, which is clearly terrible for 5 resources. So yeah, that was pretty useful. So yeah, that is the deck. As I say, I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to go because it was, in my mind, quite experimental and maybe a little bit out there. However, the founding logic behind it was, I think, quite sound, and so it has proven to be. It's done well. Would I take it to a PQ? I don't think anyone would be expecting it, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely got some legs to it. I think there is some tweaking to do, and I've already mentioned a few improvements with Sneaking Suspicion instead of Armor of Fortune. Probably go to a full 3 of that for Han. Try and squeeze in the Spark of Rebellion Millennium Falcon somewhere. I mean, the Ebon Hawk would probably be able to be ditched. Maybe one less outmaneuver. I'm not sure, but yeah, there's definitely a very, very strong base here. And yeah, they definitely won't be expecting it. They'll be expecting you to be on the ground. They'll probably expect a decent number of sentinels on the ground. I mean, they'll be expecting the likes of Yoda, all that kind of thing. They'll be like, no, we in space, boy. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, and take care. It's gotten cold out. Well, in this country at least, it's gotten cold out there. And I'll see you in the next one. I do not know what the next one's going to be. Oop. I realise I've only done hero decks this set, so let's try and get a villainy one out there. I think is going to be the aim. So yeah, see you in the next one.